Hey guys, do you want to make a really nice snow melting effect? Then you came to the right place. Stay tuned and watch the tutorial. If you want to comment anything on the comment section, feel free to do so. I'm always there for you. See ya. Guys, do you want to join a really nice server? We have tons of different channels. We have effects, modeling, loop dev, compositing. We will have resources for every type of discipline. So hop in and have fun. Okay, to start with, we have this scene. It's basically empty. You will have this in the description. And we have a cube, and we have this pot and some rocks. These rocks at the pot, I want them to become like burn attributes, right? But we also have a ground, right? This is only a couple of noises. I'm going to hop in and explain. We have a grid, we have noise with these settings, and that's about it. This is our ground, and here we have some normal, so we can then paint mask. If we can see it painted here, I use an attribute paint with this button and I started painting all over the place. Well, this is to scatter some points, and then I scatter some rocks with a mountain. Without a mountain, this would only become spheres, right? Then I added another noise on top of it to blend them together, and I have this codron. Of course, you will have the source file. This is from Rich, from Megascans, and I merge all of it together to have our setup. Okay, so first of all, I want to have the collisions of our simulation. We really need to do, for example, a extrude volume. The extrude volume makes our grids to have a volume. This is very simple, a really simple setup. And we can have on the left side our result, and we will use this to create a collision source. Collision source. You don't need that much detail to have a collision source. We're going to make this becoming the out SDF ground, because this is an SDF, assign distance field, and perhaps you want a tiny bit more resolution. There we go. I think this is okay. But maybe we're going to pop it a little bit more. 0.2. There we go. Now we see every detail. And instead of using this one, because this one will give us a ton of geometry, I want to convert BDB. Why I want to convert BDB? Because I have the option here to have an adaptivity. If you can see closely, we have tons of polygons, but if we set the adaptivity to 0.05, we will only have polygons on the detail zone, and this is really fast. So let's copy this null, and this will be out poly ground. Okay, so this is our first collision geometry. We don't need this null. There we go, with Shift L, that was the trick. Now on the left side, we're going to have a similar setup. We're going to copy and paste this one, and we will see that we have our pot and our rocks. On the left side, we will have out poly burn, because this will be what is going to burn our grain simulation, and this will be our SDF, right? Okay, so first of all, I want to have more detail here. This is going to be our collision geometry, right? So perhaps we can have something like this. And what we want to do now, this is the collision geometry, but what we want to do now is to have something like a burn geometry. We will use this to collide, and we will use a deformation. So let's BDB from polygons. We won't need that much resolution, so I believe 008 should do the trick. We don't have that much, only 600,000. And remember to set this to collision. Now let's make a volume bop where we are going to distort our geometry. Let's do a bind exports And in order to distort this, we need to sample a field. We're going to volume sample our collision. So nothing is going on here. It looks the same, but in fact, if we add, for example, a noise, a turbulent noise, on position, we will get a distortion. Or we need to fix some stuff here. Let's add 15. Let's add 15 and 15. There we go. Otherwise, we will have broken geometry. And now we need to add our original position to this distortion. Now we're talking about we need 5, 5, and 5, and the offset. I'm going to with the middle mouse promote parameter in order to have an animation. We want this to be a 3D. We're going to go back, and before that, we're going to set the amplitude to 2.2. If we go back, we can write the following: $f.004. So each frame is going to do 1 multiplied by this value. So we're going to have a swirly collision. This will be our out all deformed. And we're ready to go with our collision geometries. On the left side, we got a cube. This cube will fall down on these two geometries. We only did a smooth, a mountain, so we can distort it a tiny bit. Vellum constraints. I have this set here. You can have any value you want. In order to make it faster, we're going to use multiply by 2. Otherwise, it's going to be really slow. For my final simulation, I chose this density. And it was very slow. I think like 1 hour and a half the whole simulation is 240 frames. But let's stick with 2. We're going to paint this black. You will see why in a couple of minutes. And we're going to add some noise on the attraction weight. Okay, so let's see. Let's watch this attraction weight. With Control middle click, you can click on this and it will appear here. Otherwise, you can right click here and edit this over here with the ramped attribute and the attribute attraction weight. We're going to promote the attraction weight to the detail on minimum. This will be attraction weight minimum. The same with the maximum here. See, minimum, maximum. And we're going to do the following. This is very interesting. We're going to bind import. We're going to bind like this and plug the attraction weight on the first input. The attraction weight min and max are going to be on source min and max. So it doesn't matter the value you have, you're always going to have a clamped attribute that goes from 0 to 1. This is really handy if we want to then reshape it. With this, we're going to reshape this. And then we're going to plug this into, because you already know this is going to 0 to 1 because of this. And we're going to plug it to the values we want and then export it again as an attraction weight. So I decided I want to have an attraction weight of 0.15 to 0.6, and basically this is the ramp I chose. You can do whatever you want here. Remember, if you move this, all the values will change on a clamped ramp, and if you see here, we have everything very clamped together. So I'm going to go back as we were, and we are going to delete this detail attribute that we do not need. Everything here is necessary. Yeah, everything here is necessary. And this is our source. So having understand these two guys, we're going to start by creating a Dop network. So in our Dop network, we're going to have instantly a merge. In one side, we're going to have our Vellum, and on the other side, we're going to have our flip. All of them are going to have a gravity. They're going to be both affected by gravity. We're not going to set this to mutual, but we do not really need that at the moment. And we're going to start by setting up our collisions. So let's go to collisions and do a static object. And let's grab a merge. This will be our our ground, and this will be our burn. So let's plug these guys together. Let's do a merge. This will go here and this will go here. Always on the left side, always. So now that we have this, with Shift S, you can make this nicer. We're going to go to ground. We're going to go to out, call out poly ground here. And we're going to go to collisions, volume. This will be set to sample, and this will be set to out SDF ground. In fact, we're going to copy this and we're going to paste it, and we're going to set this to burn. This will be set to burn, and this will be set to burn. There we go. Now we have everything together here. This is our collision. It works flawlessly. Okay, so let's start with what we want. Let's do a Vellum solver, and let's also do a Vellum object, and let's also do a Vellum source. This will be called grains, and here we're going to grab our out source. We should see the particles here working just fine. So we have everything together. We need to stop watching this so we can see the points, and well, let's see what happens. Let's press play. Something odd is happening. They are jumping all over the place, and the easy solution is to increase the substeps to 2. And now it kind of works better here, and they all settle down after a moment. Okay. So remember that we had an actually white here. Okay, we're going to use that to modify a couple of things here that we want to have. So velocity damping is going to set to 0.1. We want to lose velocity over time. If you press go to 1, we'll have a really odd simulation. It's like a really high drag. I don't like that, so let's set this to 0.1. Right there we go. Collision iterations will be set to 200, and dynamic scale will be set to 2. Static threshold will be set to 1. So we will have basically we're going to have like friction all over the place. Let's see what happens. See, they don't move that much anymore. We will go to advance grain collisions. The attraction weight will be set to 1, and the repulsion will be set to 100. And there we go. We have snow. Amazing. This is obviously very low resolution. We can try pumping this to 1, only so we can see. We will go back to 2 in a moment. This works interesting. You see, when you have more resolution, you usually have to pump the substance like to the double, kind of. See, it's slower, but now it has more sense. See? It's working perfectly. Okay, this is great, but we're going to go back to what we had before so we can iterate faster for this tutorial. Okay, so there are a couple of things. This is where it becomes a little bit complicated. We need to make a sub-solver. And we're going to copy the substeps, and we're going to hop in. And we're going to make another solver here, a solver inside a solver. This is going to make, or to be used to melt these grains, and we're going to paste the relative reference of the substeps. Otherwise, we're going to have a really bad time figuring out why this is slow, because, well, if you only iterate once for every 2 substeps, basically you will have everything slow down like slow motion. So in this case, we can say on the first input we have our grains, right? This is very good. And we would like to have another merge. In this case, we would like to have our out deformed. This will be what is going to burn our particles, our grains. So let's do a wrangle. And let's hop in. This will be called infection, even though it's not an infection. And we're going to set up a couple of variables, all of them which are going to be float. Float SDF mag, it will be called volume sample. There will be one. This will be collision because we're dealing with the collisions. It could be called anything, to be honest. And this will be B at P, so we can have our collision where it has to be. Right, let's do another one. Float max edge will be called, it will be CHF max edge, and the final one will be float SDF mag fit. This will be the most complex, but it's not really that complex. Imagine we have a cube, a volume. When we use a BDB from polygons, this is our geometry. Now, let's say you have some way of determining of knowing where this point is. How do we know? If it's outside, it has to have a value. If it's inside, it will have another value. If it's outside, it will be, this value will be basically positive 1, right? Positive 1. If it's inside, this value will be negative 1. And if this is on the middle, it will be 0. So we can determine where this point is. Basically, we're going to do a fit function. This will be set to SDF mag because we need this, and we know by a fact. Now we will do a fit function from the SDF mag. We know this goes from -1 to 1, but in this case we want to clamp this to this value. So max edge. Why are we doing this? I will explain it in a bit. We want the CHF SDF mag min, and we want the SDF max. There we go. So let's click on this. Okay, so the edge we want is basically 0.6. Instead of going all the way to this part, perhaps I want this to be a little bit inside, so we don't have that much heat emitting from the collision geometry. So this is okay. So everything that is the closer to this -1 will have an additive value of 0.003, and everything that is near the edge will go from 0. So if we are here, we're going to be adding a nice value. If we are inside, we're going to be really hot, and if we are on the outside, this will go like 0, nothing. We're not going to add anything. And we're going to do our final clause, which will be if b at cd is less or equal to 1, hence it's not white, and the SDF mag is lower or is less than the max edge. Basically, if we are under that threshold, we're going to do the following. B at CD will be plus and equal to 0.0001. So each frame is going to add that. We're also going to add our SDF mag fit. So it's going to add like a gradient from the inside to the outside, and we're going to do around PTNAM multiplied by 0.0005, so we can have a little bit of randomization. This should work, and let's see it in action. If we go inside, there we go. This should work perfectly. Let's see it in action. So let's press play. We should see some particles starting to turn white. Yes, we are seeing. Amazing. This means it's getting hot in there. And perhaps this is too far. So instead of 0.6, we want 0.06. So now you will see everything that is near the simulation will get white. Near the simulation, near the collision, right? You will start to sit here in a moment. Perhaps the particles are already too big to sit. Okay, now we are watching this. Okay, see how this is working? And what's funny is that it's not hitting all over the place the same. Why? Because we're using this, which is getting deformed over time, so the magnitude will change. Okay, so let's reset the simulation. Let's hop in. Let's hop in. Let's hop in. There we go. So we want to group them by CD. If the length of B at CD is bigger than 0.9 and the frame is bigger than 1, we'll do I group melt equals to 1. We will group them. This will be melted, and we will do a split where we split the melted group. This will be melted, and this will be non-melted. Let's see it in action. We need to set this to non-melted, and let's, for the time being, increase this to by 10. This will be 10 or 20 times faster, so we can see it faster. Oh, where are my particles? I think I misclicked. Oh, this needs to be set to points and inverted. There we go. So now we should see these particles here, right? They will fall. They will start getting hit over time really fast, and we will see them disappear. Look, just in a moment. There we go. They are disappearing. This is working perfectly. This is what we wanted. This is melting. Okay, so let's hop in again. I'm going to do a couple of things before setting this flip simulation. We want to do a BDB from particles. I would like to see this further in time. Let's go here. This should load fast. And let's hop in and let's do BDB from particles. I want this to be set to 0.01. We want to have this set to collision. This to 0.2, and the other one to 0.02. This works perfectly, and this will work when we have higher resolutions. We don't want anything else. Okay, so what are we doing here? We are actually preparing our collision for the flips, so we got to do a BDB smooth also, and this will be set to 1, and we are going to do a null. This will be the out SDF grain call, and if we convert this back to polygons, we're going to have our out poly grain call. So we are going to have an animated collision geometry each frame. We need to set this to here. And one more thing, and the final we got to do is to create a water. Otherwise we're not going to have water anywhere. We're going to only have some points. So we are going to do a for each point here. We're not seeing it at the moment, but we will once they start melting. So let's go up to a frame where they melt. And there we go. Let's wait for that frame. Okay, so this frame, for example, we got some missing ones here, but they're not actually missing, they're only waiting for us on this frame. See, we got a couple of them. And we want to attribute delete everything here, but our P scale and our velocity. See, now we have a couple of points that has a tiny bit of velocity and they have a P scale. And we're going to replicate our points. Point replicate. There we go. So how many points do we want is the question. And how do we know? If we have more points, we're going to have a ton more points after the point replicate. And we want to control this, and we cannot go in each time inside and changing these points per point, right? So we're going to make a simple division. Let's go back here. Let's make a controller. This controller will be called, well, controls, but we're going to add an integer. This integer will be the num of particles. Number of particles. There we go. So we got this, which is going to be our controls, and we want to have, let's say, 1 million at the end of the day. We're going to copy this, and we're going to go inside here, and we're going to paste it here. See? And now for each point we have 1 million, but we do not want that. You want to go back here, outside, and let's grab this with shift with Control C. We want to know what amount of particles we have there, so we're going to divide these by the endpoints of this one, right? And since I want to have the same relative reference path, I'm going to do the following a couple of times: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and this has to go between brackets. There we go. So now we will always have, at the end of the day, the amount of particles we need, but divided by each grain we have, right? So if we multiply 126 by the amount of grains we have, we're going to have 1 million at the end of the day. Great. So we're going to attribute delete here the p scale, and we're going to point shitter just a tiny bit. Oh my god, just a tiny bit here. It will be set to 0.005. This will be set to a sphere, the uniform scale to 2. And on attributes, we're going to copy this. So we are going to have the velocity, because we need that. And we're going to have a change in seed each frame. And there we go, we're done with our setup for flips. So this part is already done. We're going to move it here. Okay, so this is going to work if we are not going to use the receding function. So let's do our flip solver. We plug this here, use a flip object. In this case, what I want to do is to have a value. This value will be set to 0.0013. I already know the scale of this scene. You can have a different scale and hence a different particle separation. And I want this to be set to 1.6 because we want to have like easier interaction between particles. The grid scale can be set to 1.25 so we can have better collisions. We're going to close our boundaries on initial data. We do not want anything on guides. In guides, I would like to see the collisions. I would like to see them. On physical, I want to have a bounce forwards 0.8 and a friction of 1. And we want to have a source, right? Because we don't have a source. Let's use a pop source. The pop source is going to be set here. And what are we going to grab? Okay, what we're going to grab is, in fact, if we go inside here, this, the melted. There we go. This is the melted. And this will go to all points, and that's about it. We don't want anything else. And one more thing is we need a collision. This won't really work for what we want, and so we need to have a volume source. This will be set to collisions, and if we hop in here and here, we have the out SDF grain collision. This is what we want. we will set it here and we will plug it into volume velocity. Now we have our water when it comes to life being colliding with everything. Let's modify this a couple of times. On substeps, we want to have 2 substeps. This will add more detail at the end of the day. In particle motions, we always want to have ID attribute. We want to have an edge. This works to visualize or to do whatever you want on subs. And on receding, this guy is the most difficult guy of the flip solver. You will want to play a lot with it. I already discovered a couple of settings that might work here, and these are the following: 16, 20, 3, 2, and 3. Okay, so this depends on the amount of voxels we have. So at this resolution, we will have for each voxel 16 particles, and this can be multiplied with this oversampling. So basically, the more you have here, the more particles you have. This is how inside or outside the volume of the flip is going to be affected by this receding, and on the edges we can have an oversample. If it goes below this factor, they will be not created. I mean, they will be created, and if they go above this factor, they will be deleted. These two guys are really difficult to create, so you can turn them off. If you don't want to mess with them, I will turn them on. We only want to have a tiny bit of vorticity because, well, it works. It's always good to have vorticity. And on volume motion, I want a velocity smoothing of 2. I don't want this to be so harsh. And I want to enable viscosity by attribute. So, as you can see, we do not really have a viscosity attribute yet. I mean, at least we didn't set it up anywhere. But we're going to set it up in a moment. One last thing we want to do is this never told by anyone on any tutorial, but I was told by Howard, who is always on the following Discord channel, helped me realize that if we set this to 0.1 and solve with pressure adaptivity, we can have a really nice and fast and detailed simulation. This is optional. Remember, guys, this is optional. You can lose detail with this. But in this case, I want to have a faster simulation. Basically, what we are doing is to reduce our scale 100 times so we can have more detail inside the simulation. Otherwise, we should scale it up, and it would be a really mess. And on volume limits, we want to have 4, 1.2, 4, and here 0.2. Okay, so now everything is at this scale. We do not need much more, and we can start watching our simulations. I'm going to set these controls to 1 more 0, and let's see what happens when I reset the simulation. Let's see. It will take a tiny bit more because, well, now we're creating water. So this is working. This is really working. Let's see here. I want to not visualize this. Particles. I want this to be set to particles. There we go. See, this is working. This is creating water, and we have this collision, which is nice. See, I don't want to see the collisions anymore. And let's go a couple of frames further to 96. Okay, so we got our particles. We had 22 million. Perhaps this is this is very interesting. I should have saved the flipbook. Okay, so we have this. We have really nice details. Remember, if you don't want to have this amount of details, it's okay. You can move this to 1 or to 0.1. In my situation, I am enjoying. I really like this amount of detail. So let's hop out, since we are done with our simulations. This is how it looks with points. And what we want to do is to have 2 dop import fields. So, and what we want to have is to have 2 dop import fields. set to geometry. Here set to geometry. This will be the network, and we know by fact that inside of .NET 1 we have something called grains, which is this one. So this will be set to grains. In fact, we could also do this $os, which is the same, grains. And let's see what happens. See, we have our grains, and we have inside here, and well, I didn't change it, but this should be set to liquid. And we lost it. So we're going to simulate again. Okay, so we have this, and here we want to use liquid. Now we have the liquid, and we want to but here we want to use a flip, and we want to compress it, flip compress, and want to compress it, right? So we'll have these boxes working after our geometry, and we should have the same resolution. This is very nice, and we're going to do the following. There we go. So we have the out liquid here, and now we want to mesh this guy. We're going to do a file cache, and this will be called sim. This will $os. This will be set to the folder cache, and we're going to save a range. I'm going to only save a single frame, and we will see what happens. We have everything here, and we want to split based on our stream Vellum source. So let's do the following. On the left side we have our grains, out grains, and on our right side we will have our out liquid. We want to have a particle fluid surface. This will be set to particles, and we have the particles here. But what we want to do is to attribute delete our GL spheres, because we only want the points. This is okay. This is really nice. In fact, this is very nice, and we're going to do the following. There we go. So we have the out liquid here, and now we want to mesh this guy. So we are going to copy this guy here, go here, do a BDB from particles. This will be set to the relative reference. This is okay, this is very nice. This will be set to 0.2, and this is 1.2, and this will be set to 0.2. So this can handle various amounts of resolutions, and we're going to do a BDB smooth it out just a tiny bit. There we go. Sometimes the B per box, and only set to 1. Before, after. See, this is better. We're going to also do a BDB combine. The BDB combine will grab our geometry SDF burn right here, and it will be set to SDF difference and match low res to higher res. So we should see something going on. It depends on various parameters, for example the resolution, and we also want to do this with the ground. Okay, so you see how this smooth combine reshapes it. Okay, this is great for the collision, and we want to reshape this after the smooth. but instead of dilate, we're going to use an erode. This will create more harsh details. Maybe this is too much, so perhaps an offset of 0.2 can work. And obviously everything here is optional. And what we can do is to BDB convert this back into polygons, and this adaptivity is set to 0.05. And now we have our water. We can do the same. We can do the same if this is out liquid mesh, and we can do the same with our grains, believe it or not. So we could copy and paste it here. Remember guys, this is optional. You don't necessarily need a mesh for the grains, but it's always nice to have both approaches. This will be out grain mesh. Perhaps in this case we can have more smoothing. Let it process, and there we go. So this is our loading of geometry, and if you want to export this, you can just save this mesh right here, liquid mesh. This is the same, and we just want to, okay, where we did this should be set to $, and we could go to cache, sequence, frame range, and we'll have the frame range. We can do the same here, and this will be the grain mesh. Oops, liquid mesh, grain mesh, and there we are ready to go. I'm going to make a final high resolution simulation, and in order to do that we're going to set this to, in my case, to 0.5. We're going to go back into our solver, and we're going to set this, I'm going to set this guy to 16 substeps. I believe this is okay. This is really nice already, and if we zoom, we should see something like this from this camera angle. Okay, so this is what we got. Look at how great this is melting and how the water actually interacts with the grain simulation. Perhaps here is a little bit too much, but this has to do with the receding factor. This is sliding very nicely. I really enjoy this. Hey, I hope that you enjoyed the video. Please remember that we are always talking about effects on the Discord channel, as said on the intro. So, as always, thanks for watching.